Welcome to the coldest match masterclass we have ever filmed. -5 when I got in the car this morning, and if there is a method to catch a fish in these conditions, it is dobbing bread. And having filmed this method underwater in the past and learning so much from it, we've now adapted and improved. So this is my improved dobbing bread match masterclass. Right then, let's get straight into it. Improved dobbing fishing. And what do I mean by that? Well, as we said, we had the luxury of underwater cameras fishing this exact peg, I think it was last year, and we learned so much. But we're now going to put it into a fishing situation, because obviously fishing in front of a camera was very, very restrictive in the fact that I had to fish in a tiny, tiny little square where the camera could see. And we got some wicked footage and we learned so much that I'm going to now show you. But it was very restrictive in the fact that we had to fish at that depth and we had to fish exactly where that camera was looking. Luckily, it was an absolute highway of fish. I cannot explain how many fish were there. And that was the first thing that probably we learned is, yes, it's cold, it's -5, half the lake is frozen. The only reason this half isn't is because that area it was on, which was spinning, and it's kept this ice free for us. But it's frosty, it's cold, you can catch in that weather. This is the method to do it, and hopefully what we learn will improve that catch rate. So the biggest thing that we learned is how important movement was. Now, like I've said, I've already explained that we're very sort of shackled in that video, and despite on the day it was raining and it wasn't very windy, there was still quite a lot of water movement. So I had to fish a much heavier rig than I would have liked to, because what we learned is movement was so key. Like we had, you didn't see it all, but we had hours worth of footage of fish swimming past a dormant bit of bread hung right in front of their nose. And we'll overlay it in this video, you can see exactly what I mean. But movement was so key to making them grab it. So this is what we've changed the rig to. Before I go on to the rig, if you didn't see the underwater video, honestly, you learn so much, and I still think that it's the only underwater dobbing bread video on YouTube. I might be wrong, someone may have done it now, but the video, I'll put a link in the description, it's well worth a watch, and then you can see why we're doing the changes we are. So, the rig has changed in the fact that I want it to be lighter, and I want it to fall slower, because we can now do that with no cameras in there. So quickly, let's scoot over the elastic. We've got orange slick elastic. That just marries up to whatever fish you're fishing for. A huge mixture of sizes in here, so for me that's absolutely perfect. I've got 0.16 mainline, a relatively large gap between my float and my connector, because I want to try not to cast my chad on the pole over where I'm fishing. I've got a number 8 back shot. I have back shot in all my fishing, but this is where the rig change comes in. So, because we want it to be nice and light, we want the bread to sink nice and slow. I've said it enough times now, that's so important. Your rig needs to be light for it. So I've got a carp shallow 0.2 gram of a pole float with a carbon stem. So that means I can see bites as they're going down. You basically, any stem apart from wire is absolutely fine. So make sure it's not a wire stem float. And 90% of your shot wants to go right below your float, because it's then not increasing the sink rate of your bread. But I have got down my line, I've got halfway down, we've got a number 12, and then a couple of foot below that, we've got another number 12. So the only shot I have on my line is literally 2 number 12s. You do have to have some weight on your line, because if not, try it in the edge. If you lay your rig on the surface, the tension, the surface tension, the line doesn't really break through it, it doesn't really sink. So those shot are literally just to break the surface tension and start your rig from falling. Then we've got a size 16 hook. So that is the rig that we're fishing now. And like I said, it's very, very different from the rig that we fished during that session, because I've already explained, and loads of comments said, oh, your rig and your bait was falling too quick. And I completely agree, but perhaps now you understand why, because we had to keep it right inside that sort of window where we're filming. Now, we learnt much more about bread disc size and everything like that, and another little couple of tricks, but I'm not going to give it to you all in one go. So we're going to start fishing and see if we can put this rig into action. So as I've already said, the main thing that we learned was movement was absolutely key. So the case of lifting and dropping that rig in makes a huge difference. And I would probably let it fish for about 30 seconds to a minute before I repeat that process, because honestly, and like I said, the footage will be played, like so many fish would ignore a static bait. Now the other thing you have to work out, now we haven't got luxury of a camera down there, is one's where you're fishing, and two, how deep are you fishing as well. So because we can now explore all of this water in front of me and we're not underwater filming, I can go anywhere today and I will try and find them. But I'm convinced there's going to be fish down here. But so what I'm going to do is, because that rig's so light, I'm just going to keep picking it up and swinging it, keep getting that nice fall throughout the water. You're hoping to grab some attention. One may grab it on the way down, but lots of times they were really interested when it got to the bottom of the fall. That was when you managed to pick up a fish. So in the case of how we're fishing today, I'm going to be a lot more of that, a lot more active with the rig, keep laying it in, and hopefully we'll find one that will grab it. Whether that's here in this spot or we have to research other areas, different depths, that is the main difference in this rig to the rig that you saw underwater. Like I said, it's all about creating that nice slow fall. Hopefully we're going to have one that is willing to grab it reasonably soon. And we have found one that has settled a few nerves. You know, when you come out and it's like so cold, you're thinking like, is it going to happen? But I think it just proves that the right method is the way forward, and Dobbing bread is that right method in winter. We actually had to come away from the little stump that we were filming, where we filmed underwater. We literally didn't have an indication, despite lowering that rig in and out. And I said to you, it's all about finding where the fish are. And I've just gone out to that aerator, lift and drop rig in about 3 or 4 times, so literally probably a couple of minutes fishing, and we have found our first fish. There we go, bang, get in there. It might be -5 last night, but the sun is out, it's actually really bright, and it's a scorching 1 degrees out here at the moment, so we are happy with that. That is absolutely freezing. I'm not going to hold him for too long because it is so cold. We're going to get it back in there, and we will talk you through some of the other stuff that we learned from the underwater footage. There we go. Right, straight on to the next thing that we learned then from the underwater filming. And this one actually amazed me because it's all about the size of the disc of bread. Now, I always have a selection of punches when I'm bread fishing, and for years, and how I even started that session, I used the biggest one I've got, either 12 or 10 mil, and I thought that a big disc of bread, really visual, attraction, that was potentially true. But on a couple of different occasions, what we had was the fish would come up, try to engulf the bread, and it actually hit their lips. It was almost a little bit too big. So on the day, we dropped down to a 4 mil punch, and ever since then, Dobbing bread, I've never really looked back. They didn't find it any less attractive than a big one, but everything that sucked it in then didn't have that occasion where it would hit the mouth and not go in. If you were solely fishing for big fish, let's say everything was above 4 or 5 pound, then you probably could fish a big punch, so don't get me wrong, but have a selection. And for me now, just think about the size of the punch you use. Like I said, I didn't really think about it. And while I do it, how I keep my bread, I've got a slice of bread inside 2 bait boxes just so it doesn't dry out. And then basically this was the next thing that we learned. So what I used to do, and what I'm doing here, I used to punch 2 discs, and I would get those 2 discs and I would squeeze them as hard as I could to keep them on the hook. Now that worked very well for the purpose of keeping them on the hook, but what it did do, and what we noticed on camera, is it made the bait sink really fast again. So we're losing what we're trying to achieve with this rig. So there's no point having a bait that sinks really fast if your rig's trying to make everything go slow. So I still punch 2 discs, but I just nip them together. So they're hardly sort of together really, and that is what I put on. Now, when you test that, dropping it in the edge compared to 2 discs that are really stuck together hard, it sinks an awful lot slower. So that was another thing that we learned on the day, was the fact that don't squeeze 2 discs really hard. Try and keep a nice fluffy hook bait and really think about that punch size. If you're fishing for F1s, trust me, you want to be using smaller punch size. Now, I'm going to apologise because I absolutely hate presenting in sunglasses, but the sun here just comes right round in front of you and I just can't see anything. I can hardly see anything with these on, but let's hope that there's another fish out near this aerator. And what I said at the start, the whole thing about this method is finding where the fish are. Like I said, I started by this post down here because that's where we underwater fished last time and I thought they would be there, but we didn't have a bite. Not to say that they're not, because one thing that we did learn as well is we got absolutely no indication. If my float went under, every single time it was a fish that had a go at my hook bait. The bait went in its mouth for the bait to go under. I never once had a liner all day and there was loads and loads of fish there. So this is what I was saying about sometimes you're sitting there, like I'm sitting out there now, I don't know if there's a fish there, but you know, I'm pretty confident that there will be. We had one relatively quick on that cast. So it's just about repeating that process of lift and dropping, trying to catch their attention. Hopefully that slow falling rig, the smaller bait punch and the fluffier bait all together makes a difference and you can find one. Now, it's so important when you're dobbing bread to do it, like I said, where fish are going to be. Hey, there we go. If you were just to do this, whoa, he's going mental. If you were just to do this in the middle of nowhere, yes, you could get it right and you could find a pocket of fish, but you'd be very lucky. What you're looking for is exactly where we're fishing today. Stage-ins, aerators, even that whole far bank, anything like that. Reeds, we've got reeds down here on the close side. Now, it's really clear today, so I can see that there's no fish in these reeds, but anywhere where fish are likely to sit is where you want to fish this method. Like I said, because let's face it, the attraction levels are quite low. You're not feeding for them, you're not making any noise, so you've got to drop it right in front of where a fish is. So let me try and concentrate on this and then we'll give you another little tip about potentially depths, because I think depth's very important as well. You've got to find, not only have you got to find where those fish are sitting, you've also got to find at what depth they're sitting. So it can be, although you know, on the surface it's quite a simple method, there's an awful lot to think about when you're trying to put together all of those in one equation. Where are they? What depth are they? Sort of, how are they feeding? But here we go. There's another one. That was perfect. That's exactly how you want it to work. And on a day like this, I know there's not a match today, but fish like that are all you need, and you wouldn't need that many of them. That is an absolute block of ice. Should I hold up? I don't really want to hold up because it is absolutely freezing, but there we go. That's how effective dobbing bread can be if you put it in the right area. Let's get this one slipped back. Let's pop him back in there and I will see. Oh, he's just got his fin caught. Let's net him back up. Sometimes you find with these fish, they just get their fin caught in the net. So if they do that, just unhook it gently. And oh, he's got it done again. They're really annoying when they get this. And certain, you get a lot of this with new fish in nets. They just get real spiky fins. Right, you're free this time. Let's get you back in there. There we go. That does happen in fishing. There's no point denying it. Sometimes they get a bit of fin damage and they can easily get stuck in nets. So just be gentle with them and you should be all right. So let's go see if we can catch another one. Again, we're going to repeat the process. So still punch 2 discs of bread, put that lid back over the top of it to keep you fresh, very minimal pressure to keep it light, and then wham, you hook straight through there. So as we go back out to where we're fishing, like I said, we've now had 2 bites near that aerator. I don't know how long that one took, but I think it was second or third drop in. But the next thing I said that I was going to talk to you about is depth. So for me, I've got a bit of a process of how I do it, to be honest. I don't know why, but I've always found, certainly when it's really cold like this, that a very, very good depth is 2 foot off the bottom. So whenever I start my session, I'll actually plumb up as if I was going to fish, literally like I would fishing on the bottom with bait, like pellets and maggots and stuff, just so you know how deep it is. Just to randomly guess, in my opinion, isn't the one. So what I do is I plumb it up, and then for me, the sort of the kill zone is 2 foot off the bottom to just above halfway. Somewhere in that band is where I tend to find you catch a lot more fish. Obviously, if the fish were giving you signs that they're higher than that, then you can adjust to it, because normally when it's cold like it is now, I can see, just looking down here in my margin, I can see sort of 3 foot down. So if there was anything out there, I'm sure that I would see it if they were really high in the water. So I can kind of eliminate that on days like this. And like I said, for me, that band is 2 foot off the bottom to just above halfway. Somewhere in there is a good starting point. So if that helps you, hopefully that you can sort of get in the areas where you need to be fishing quickly. Because like I said, it can be quite demoralising. It seems a weird way, doesn't it? I've got a couple of friends who are really positive and like all they want to do is put loads of bait in, and that can still work in winter, but for them this is like so alien because I'm not fed anything. Like one slice of bread will do me for a whole session, and it's all about getting it in front of them, making it go in nicely with that really light rig. Everything's really important, and hopefully you can catch a few more. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try and catch a couple now. Keep lowering this rig in around the area. If the bite's dry up there, I'll try this far side. I might pop down here because you will scare them off. Like if you catch a couple here, you might find they move a metre or so either side of it. So keep moving, keep changing. If you go through a dry period, change the depth. It's not a method you can just sit and do one thing all day, but it is a method that will catch you fish when potentially nothing really wants to eat anything. That was a good little session, a few carp caught. It just amazes me how clear this water is. Now I've got my glasses on, like I can see, well, down here is probably 4.5 foot and I can see the bottom, and this is definitely a visual method. I've already said you're not feeding anything, so you need to make sure it's catching their eye, and that's what it's done so far. But the last thing I want to talk to you about, to get another bait ready, is one other thing that we found is there is some things you can do to make it a little bit more attractive. I'm talking about liquid enhancement, so colour and flavour. Now, I'm not going to lie and say when we done this in underwater filming, it was like flicking a light switch and they just went straight to it. But there was definitely times where it made a difference. It made the bite time slightly quicker. And I think if you can do anything to put a quicker bite in your favour, it's worth doing. So we messed around with red, I think, that day, and different flavours, like a citrusy flavour. But today I've just got the Dynamic Wowzers in ESB as in a spray, just because bread is so good at taking on liquid. You can literally just give it a spray and then just let it soak in, because that's now going to draw into it. Now, obviously, don't get me wrong, some of that's going to wash off when you put it in the water, but just keep it out of the water for a little bit. That's now sucking all that in, and it definitely made a little bit of a difference. So, I mean, this is pretty much as good as I've got now. This is everything that we learned in one motion now. So we've got a nice light rig with very, very few weight down the line. We've got a small hook bait to make sure it goes in their mouth. We've got a hook bait that's not pushed together very hard, so it sinks and flutters down slowly. And we've now got a hook bait with some flavour on. So like I said, that's like everything that we learned that made a difference in the underwater, all in one presentation. Now this, I can't hardly see, this sun is awful, so I have to sit here like this, apologies, just so I can see my float. But all of my bites have come around that aerator, and that shows how localised the fish can be. Like I tried down this post, I've tried down that far side, and just absolutely nothing has given me a sign that they're anywhere else. Like I said, I haven't had a liner here because we noticed in the underwater you just don't get liners, even with fish swimming past and brushing your line. The only time it went under was a bite, and like I said, the only time my float's gone under is somewhere around this aerator. So it does show that yes, it is absolutely freezing, so clear, and this sun is making fishing awkward, but it's probably warmed up by a degree or two, and there's a couple of fish that are willing to have a bit of a feed. And if you get it in the right spot at the right depth, you will catch them. Just wait for that train to go past. I'm going to lower it in again. I'm sort of guessing where I'm putting it in. It looks really weird me sitting here like this. But the one thing I would say about the flavouring and the colouring is we found it made a little bit of a difference. Like I said, not game changer, but I wouldn't use it for the first couple of casts unless you were super confident that you had it right, because the way that this method fishes, and like it is sitting there now, you know, I don't know that there's a fish there. I don't know if I've got the right depth. I don't know if I've got the right area. And if you're putting a niggle in your mind that maybe I've got the wrong flavouring or maybe I've got the wrong colour, then that's another sort of negative. It's another doubt in your mind. So I always tend to find that I know that everything will eat a disc of bread. Like if there's a fish there, eventually it will eat a disc of bread. It's just about lowering it in front of one. You get lucky when you swing it out and it flutters down right in front of one. We know how important timing is. That's why we keep laying this rig in and out. So until I've found one, until I've had a bite, I then know, right, okay, I'm at the right depth. I know I'm in the right area. Now what can I do to try and speed it up? And that's when I started to include flavourings. So for me, I try and get one bite before, there we go, there's another one. One bite before flavourings come into equation. And then once I know that, like I said, I've ticked off those processes, I've not got any doubt in my mind that there's fish there, I've not got any doubt in my mind that I'm at the right depth, that's when you can then play with it. Because you might find a little red disc or a little green disc, a little some sort of flavouring might work on the day. So once you've worked out where they are, then start to introduce the flavours and see how quick you can reduce that bite time. So yeah, that's there's another one on. It's pulling back, this one. Surprising how much it's pulling for how cold it is, but just take your time with them. Like sometimes in this sort of temperatures, you could win a match with 4 or 5 carp would do sometimes. Like I'm fishing here Sunday, and I would take right now, knowing what the weather's coming, it's going to freeze again tonight, I would take 20, 25 pound right now. I've already had that today. We've not fished anywhere near what a match weight or match time would be. So yeah, it's definitely a method that is well worth exploring this time of year. That train going past again, busy old place. But we're going to have another fish to look at. It's so good playing them here because it's so clear. I can see them all the way down, and I must admit, I've got a bit of that bait spray in my hand. It smells absolutely gorgeous. You can see why they grab it. And like I said, it's all about just swinging it in front of one. You might lower it in 5 or 6 times and you don't get a bite, and then you lower it in the 7th time and you get one. You think, well, what did I do differently? You didn't do anything different. Trust me, there'd be fish there the whole time. We've seen it on the underwater cameras. But probably what you did do is, as you picked it up and lowered it, as it fell just before it got to the bottom of its fall, it got right in front of the carp's nose and they couldn't resist it. So there is another one for you. Let's see if we can just unhook him and we'll have a look at him. Oh, it's cold. Real winter colours. You can see I got like dark, probably glistening in that sun. Cool fish, probably 3.5 pound would be added to my clicker if I was fishing a match, and I would be well chuffed with how it's going. So I might try and catch 1 or 2 more and then see what we finish up with. But yeah, that has been, or is, everything that I found on the underwater fishing all into one. If you put all of that into practice, I'm sure that you will catch a few fish. So I hope you found it very useful, and I hope you can put some of that into your own fishing. But for now, I'm going to carry on fishing, catch a few more. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit the like, and we'll see you very shortly for another Match Masterclass.